God bless you. I'm Nelson Rodriguez.
Dios le bendiga, él es Nelson Rodríguez.
This is my pastor, Norberto Torres Jr.
Yo soy el pastor Norberto Torres Jr.
I am the men's servant leader here at Refugio City Church.
Él es el líder de servicio de los hombres aquí en Refugio City Church.
And this week we're going to be showing part 2 of the conversation.
Y esta semana vamos a enseñar la parte 2 de la conversación.
I want to take this time out to thank everyone who's been viewing it.
Quiero darle gracias a todas las personas que han estado mirando esto.
Also been sharing it.
Y también lo han estado compartiendo.
When it was launched last week, I received a lot of text messages.
Cuando lo subimos la semana pasada, recibí muchos mensajes.
And it's all for the glory of God.
Y todo es para la gloria del Señor.
As I mentioned last week, it's a 3-part series.
Como mencioné la semana pasada, son 3 partes.
So this is part 2.
Esta es la parte 2.
Again, our prayer is that it may bring hope again to your life.
Y nuevamente nuestra oración es que esto pueda traer esperanza nuevamente a su vida.
And bring clarity to you.
Y pueda traer claridad hacia ustedes.
Remember, subscribe.
Suscríbense.
But also share.
Pero también compartan.
Don't keep all the good things to yourself.
No mantengan todas las cosas buenas para ustedes solamente.
Well, some things not. This one, share it, please.
Pero por lo menos esta la pueden compartir.
Amen. God bless you.
Así que Dios les bendiga.
Wow. I've read that chapter a lot, and I never saw it this way till right now. Thank that. Wow. Go ahead, Teo. You was gonna say
No. I mean, I absolutely love the position I'm in right now to just listen. That is wisdom. It's wisdom. You know, there's so many buzzwords and key things that you guys are saying that's just, my brain is just going crazy. Crazy. You know? And so
I was like, okay, whoa, wow.
You know, and it's, I hate to make generalizations, but when you think of a general stereotypical male role, it's a big part of why men oftentimes suffer in silence.
Yeah.
You know, it's we've almost been indoctrinated to just, when we feel, to shut it down. You know, we tell our sons, man up. So you a 3-year-old to man up. You're 3. You can't man up. You just try to, you know, you just recently stopped eating off the floor. You know, right. So we all these things are conditioning. And when you take that pattern of suppressing your emotion, doing everything possible to not be vulnerable, and now you're encountered with the most painful emotional suitcase of emotions that you've ever experienced. You do what most people do in that situation. You avoid, you escape, you run, you distract, you know? So it feels better in that moment, but it doesn't last. So you need more distraction, more escapism. You feel better, but it doesn't last, you know? And from a clinical standpoint, this concerns me because this is where you see high rates of suicide in men. So you might not hear a lot of men talking about depression or getting treatment for depression, but 80% of people who commit suicide and complete it are men. So how do the rates of suicide be that high, but the rates of diagnosed depression be so low? It's because men are suffering in silence. And I have to take fault for that, because on a clinical standpoint, sometimes we're not asking the right questions. We're looking for, how do you feel? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling lonely? And depending on how you were raised, a man might never say that, but we're not paying attention to the behaviors. He's isolating. He's hanging out a lot more than he normally do. You know, he's hiding in things. He's hiding in behaviors. And in so many ways, that's just suppressing the pain until it explodes.
Wow.
You know, so.
Yo, yeah. Look, let me just piggyback off of that real quick. I really want to affirm everything that Doc just said, because being a participant in grief, there were those really bad statements of, hey, time will heal. Hey, there's going to be a blessing in this. Hey, God never gives you more than you can handle. Hey, you must be strong. Hey, you're holding up well. Hey, look, you never know God's will. Hey, I know how you feel, you know? Hey, let me know if I can. And I think one of the most destructive ones for me was, let me know what I can do for you. It's like, I don't know, what I can do for me. But more appropriate statements is, we're looking for what they're feeling. So when I thought it would be destructive until somebody came up and told me, you must feel like this pain is never going to end. And then I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, wait, when somebody said, this is really painful. Yeah, you're right. I started connecting to the emotions, or somebody telling me, look, you don't have to be strong. This looks like more than we could handle. And you think it's pessimistic, but you start connecting, and you give me an outlet for me to not have to suppress my feelings, because now I know that it's okay for me not to have to handle it. And the truth is that I don't know who taught us, and I think it's a trend of, and I don't want to make generalizations either, but it's a trend of men in general not having a very good biblical understanding. Like, when you think about who in the house reads the Bible more, a lot of people would say, oh, it's the wife. It's the wife to the children, or something like that. It tends to happen. You don't want to make that generalization, but trust me, statistically, it's true. That's why churches are more filled with women than they are with men. But and so our lack of biblical understanding taught us men, some of us, at least me at the beginning, was that God will never give you more than you can handle. And that could, I mean, that's not even biblical. Like, the Bible says that when someone is tempted, understand that God will never lead you to be tempted more than what you can bear. There is no temptation to man that is unknown. But for every temptation, God provides a way out. So the truth is, you will never be tempted beyond what you can bear. But you will have to carry in life more than you can bear for you to learn to allow God to carry. And I think that that's very, very important, to be able to ask the correct questions. Because when you're a man and you feel like you're carrying more than you can bear, there's that conflict in your mind where it's like, wait, no, I can do this, because God will never give me more than I can bear. No, yes, he can, because he wants to carry that for you. But I could not affirm what Dr. Theo was saying enough. I think it's really important to connect and to not suppress.
That's so true. That is true. I feel that leads to the next question. Well, the next two questions is that the doctor said, we deal with it. We tend to deal with it more in silence, more like within ourselves. So it is safe to say, as I opened up, that men grieve different than women. Women are more, they tend to express it more, what they're feeling. For example, you go to a funeral, the ones who are crying the loudest are the women. The ones who are, all over the place and letting it out. But then the man, you might hear him, but then it's like our culture taught us, what we learned was that man up, like you said, at 3 years old, man up. Don't, men don't cry. So is it safe to say that we do grieve different? Not saying that we don't grieve, we just grieve different. Eli.
Yeah, of course. That's my.
Kim, I was like, nah, you spoke Eli right now.
That's that's definite, man. That goes with everything. That goes with a conversation. That goes with an argument. That goes with whatever issues. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I got bills, and that goes with everything. Something happens in the family, my wife will express herself a little bit more than I will, and I'll just say yeah, or I say yeah, that's horrible, or very, very minimal in the way that I express myself. And it's part of who I am, though. Like, I don't really like to say my feelings very much, really, but it's definitely different. It's definitely different. when you're talking about, you know, a child, when you're talking about a husband, when you're talking about whatever, I think, yeah, definitely different. I don't think in a bad way, because also I don't want to say that it's okay for the man not to cry and not to weep and not to yell, you know, not to moan and groan, because I think there should be someone to be around to be that pillar, while everybody else is, you know, quote unquote losing it. There has to be someone there to keep it all together. You know, an example is my dad. When his mom passed years ago, I went to Puerto Rico, and the family, of course, and you know, people, it was pretty sad, man. It was pretty sad, and it was something that I hadn't seen before. And my dad was strong, man. My dad, you know, kept it together. My dad kept it together. But when we went back to the house, everybody does their thing. Everybody's settled. And I'm a night owl, so I'm up. I go to the bathroom, and I see my dad in the hallway, broke down and crying. He's trying not to cry hard, but he's crying. You know, so I think, looking at my dad, I think that he knew when to let it go, because he also knew that he was a pillar within the family. And being that my dad was the first to come to Christ, and a lot of his brothers and sisters look up to him as far as that is concerned, as far as like someone to kind of guide them the right way, help them out. They're very respectful to my dad in that manner. I think he knew that he had to kind of be the pillar, and but he did grieve in his own way, and he did let it out, because I felt really bad for him, and I went over and gave him a hug. But I saw that, and I respected that, man. You know, I respected that, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. I don't know if I could do that. So, you know, women and men, totally different. Men and children, totally different. You know, I mean, I don't have awesome theologian stuff like Pastor Jorge or some MD stuff like the doctor. I'm just a regular dude, man.
Me. But same. So now I'll give you the floor, doctor. You know, with that question, you know, men and women, the difference, or you know, do they grieve different?
It's a tough question. And it's a tough question because I try not to label, you know, so my brain is wired to see things in an individualized way, because there are men who can grieve, like what we would classically say is feminine. Just like there's men who deal with situations classically, like how we would say a female would respond. And there are some women who deal with things emotionally in ways where we will classically say a man will respond, right? So that's the correct answer. now to get to not to get
And I'm
not to get to the answer that Nelson wants me to go a little bit more into, which is generally, is there some differences? And I think there are some differences. And a lot of it has to do with way we are conditioned and domesticated as men versus women. And that also has some cultural bias as well, right? So if we're talking about traditional African American Hispanic men, there is some difference in how I have seen them grieve clinically, right? So, and it's an interesting distinction, because at the end, it's how do you become comfortable with being vulnerable, you know? And I think even before the grief, even before having to deal with pain, a lot of times classically we're uncomfortable with being vulnerable. You know, we see vulnerability as a weakness, you know, versus seeing vulnerability for what it really is. It's actually probably one of the most courageous things you could do, you know, to do what Eli's dad did, to just break down. That's courage, you know, but to also withhold that emotion just to be there and be a pillar of hope and strength for his family. That's courage too, you know. So it's sometimes we want to pin a hole and say, well, guys doing it that way is just negative, but sometimes it's also a very unselfish thing to do, because your role as the father, as the head, is important to you, you know. So it's hard. It's a hard question, but I think ultimately what we are doing tonight goes against a lot of those stereotypes as well, because we're talking. The answer to grief is to talk, is to share your story. You know, like we said, see the opposite side of the pain and realize the love. You know, one of the analogies I've always given you, Nelson, is you take a coin. On one side, there's pain. On the other side is love. Sometimes it depends on what you're looking at. You know, if you only see that loss through the lens of pain, your response to that emotionally is going to be suffering. But if you flip that with time, because it sometimes takes time, and you see your loss through love, it's a celebration. Because there's a lot of people who go through their life who've never experienced love, you know? So to even experience love for that moment, and to have that profound grief, that's the love that's missing in so many people's life. You know, so the key is to get to that point, you know? So it's not how we start, because there are some women who start crying and showing those emotions that we think are healing at the funeral and at home, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're working through it, right? So it's not where we start, it's how we end. And the end is acceptance, the end is love, the end is being able to come out of that situation, because that's what grief is. You have to go through it, but it's how you come out of it. You know, I love the example that you talked about in terms of the amputation. The example that I use is a four-legged stool, and one of the legs are broken or taken away. You cannot sit on that stool the same way. And sometimes that's what causes a lot more pain and suffering, is we want to sit on it the way we've always sat on it, but it's no longer the same. So we're constantly falling, we're constantly re-traumatizing ourselves. And the answer is to accept it and maybe put another stool, or realize that that's just not good. That's just the way it's going to be, you know, but doing it with love. That's the answer.